Hello and welcome to the FASA Leadership Lounge, where we discuss various policies impacting Florida's school leaders. I am Michelle White, Executive Director of the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I'm Jessica Janasiewicz, and I serve as a lobbyist for FASA and a number of school districts here in Florida. While we wait for the Florida Legislature to develop and finalize a budget, we still have a number of updates to share.
That is right. In fact, this week, the governor signed a number of bills into law. Two of them specifically were priorities for FASA. We'll cover those. And the first is school start time. So we have been talking about this and talking about this. We're so excited. So really what this bill will do will give districts the flexibility to decide if they are able to move those middle school start times until after 8 o'clock and high school start times until after 8:30. If they have exhausted options and it just doesn't seem feasible, they can write a letter to the department showing what they have done and trying to implement, but it not being feasible for their district, and they will not have to comply with that requirement as was previously required. The second bill that was passed that was a priority for FASA is around school safety. And really, we put some priorities around the language relating to locked campus requirements and applying during school supervision hours instead of just whenever students are present. So that's where FASA put our priorities, but this bill actually does a few other things. So first, it will align the training and certification requirements for school security guards with those for school guardians, and it requires that all school security guards be trained and approved by the sheriff. Second, it clarifies participation in the school security guard program to private schools, ensuring that they meet the same training and screening requirements as public schools. Next, it enhances reporting requirements for school security guards and safe school officers, requiring employment and disciplinary actions to be reported to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. Next, it mandates that security guards submit the results of the required psychological evaluation to the sheriff for review. It also expands the use of firearm detection canines by authorizing school districts, in addition to law enforcement agencies, to employ them for school security. It also establishes a formal partnership between the Office of Safe Schools and the Florida Association of School Safety Specialists to develop training and certification programs for school safety personnel. And last but not least, it requires the Office of Safe Schools to convene a stakeholder work group to develop recommendations for the establishment of a Florida Institute of School Safety. So lots of language. I expect a few rules to come from this as well, but definitely gives our districts some clarification where we were hoping to get that early on in session.
Absolutely. And in addition to those bills, he was actually sent a couple of other education related bills, and he did decide to sign some of them already. The first one is Senate Bill 248, which looks at student participation in extracurricular sports. Essentially, this bill was designed to fix an issue for certain private school students, those that attend very small private schools, basically to make sure that their level of participation can be the same and they have the same options as anybody else. And then it also did add language that said that students that are homeschooled can participate in athletic teams at any public school within their school district, so long as they reside in that district, and then, of course, meets a few conditions. So some changes there for those students in those small private schools as well as homeschool students. And then he also signed a bill that we were excited about, giving some flexibility, House Bill 809. This bill deals with school social workers, and essentially it exempts the school social workers from the requirement for the general knowledge and subject area requirement for educator certification. The argument, of course, being these folks are not acting as teachers. Their role is different in the school system, and they shouldn't have to have that requirement. So hopefully there'll be some flexibility for them in that. And then he also signed Senate Bill 1514, which is anaphylaxis in public and charter schools. Essentially, this requires school district boards and charter school boards to ensure that the emergency action plan for anaphylaxis for each student in kindergarten K through 8 is in effect and accessible at all times when the student is on campus. So that includes extracurricular activities, athletics, dances, any school before and after school programs. It also requires that school boards and charter school governing boards ensure that each school serving these grade levels provides training to their personnel and contracted staff so that there are enough of them that are trained that can respond if a student is having this allergic reaction. As we mentioned at the top, one thing he did not sign this week was the budget, and that's because there isn't one for him to sign. So there was a little bit earlier this week, there was a glimmer of hope that we were all feeling when the Senate Appropriations Chairman, Senator Hooper, commented that they had received an offer from the House that did not include that sales tax reduction, which seemed to be the big elephant in the room and the big thing that was causing trouble. So we thought, oh, goodness, we're going to see some movement. Things are going to happen now. And a couple hours later, our hope was dashed when the House Appropriations Chair basically said, we're worlds apart. We still have a long way to go, and kind of dashed the hopes that we had at that moment. So as of when we're recording this, which is Thursday evening, there has been no mention whatsoever other than those comments about the budget. So one would assume that means they're definitely not coming in at least early next week. Of course, Monday being a holiday. So I would assume if anything were to happen, it wouldn't be until the end of next week. So we shall see.
We shall see. And of course, as we talk about a lot of these policies and changes, things that we keep in mind certainly are school leaders. And this week we have two new superintendents in Florida that'll be coming in as their former superintendents are retiring. So congratulations goes to Brennan Asplin, who will be the superintendent in St. John's, and to Edward Tierney, who will be the superintendent in Monroe County. Both of those are in the transition, and we know that this role is so important. It is definitely not an easy job, but it's absolutely essential to the success of our schools. So we're excited to work alongside of them as they lead their districts forward, and look forward to the leadership that they're going to bring to their students and to Florida.
Absolutely. We're excited to have them on board as leaders. Last week, we talked about one of two Supreme Court cases in which they were considering the nation's first religious charter school. In a split decision, the plan was rejected to allow the creation of the school. Because there was no majority, there will be no nationwide precedent on the issue. The reason there was no majority is Justice Amy Coney Barrett had recused herself from the case, so it ended up being a 4-4 split. And so there was no reasoning that was provided or an exact tally of how each justice voted. It just stated that the lower court ruling was affirmed by an equally divided court. So that's some developments there, to be sure.
Yeah, and potentially it'll open the door for future courts to set that precedent, right?
Absolutely.
And while we're talking about the federal level, we're still awaiting more details, of course, on the president's recommended 2026 budget, which we do expect soon. Currently, in the proposed spending plan, there is about a $4.5 billion cut from the current K-12 plan, which is about a 15% reduction. Right now, both Title I and IDEA funding are maintained, and the money allocated for charter schools has the only proposed increase. Secretary McMahon said that the reductions are coming from eliminating duplicative or ineffective programs, reducing regulatory compliance, and giving states more flexibility. The 2026 fiscal year starts October 1, so we're expecting more details pretty soon. And one other piece of research that was shared through our national organizations, there is a site where we will share through our newsletters some more details about this, but you can actually see how much of the federal funding comes into the state of Florida, and what that really looks like through the Education Law Center. So it
Hmm.
has information around the fact that Florida really gets about $4 billion for student K-12 funding. And that works out to just over $1,400 per student. Right now, that accounts for about 11% of public school K-12 revenue. And so that is something that we'll be able to share and show you the breakdown for those specific programs. The biggest program is the free and reduced lunch program as well. So more information to come as we get details about the federal budget.
Yeah, we'll definitely want to keep our eyes on that to be sure. So, what is happening next week? Well, we would love, love, love to get that announcement about the budget that we keep hoping for. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed for that. But we'll also watch as more bills are sent to the governor for his signature or veto. They've been sending them in, kind of chunks of 50 or so. And so I'm sure we'll see more of that and see more of the bills that we followed during this session be sent to him. As we get closer to the June 6th deadline for the extended session that we're currently in, we'll also be watching to see if the Senate makes any move to come to Tallahassee to extend the session beyond the 6th, like the House has already done. So the House, of course, already passed theirs to go to the 30th. If the Senate chooses to come in and do that, that'll be an indicator about how much work is left to be done in order to reach an agreement on the budget. So we'll be sure to keep you updated.
Absolutely. And we have fast pace, it seems, these weeks when they're not here. It's even faster when they are, because they're just moving so quickly. And of course, the things that the governor is receiving, those bills, it encompasses more than education. It goes beyond that. So he's having to review all of those. And hopefully they can get this budget done. We essentially have 2 weeks till that deadline. And man, I know districts are having a really hard time trying to figure out their own budgets, their own schedules for planning for next year. And hopefully we'll have some good news next week when we do this FAFSA Leadership Lounge. We had a quick update for y'all this week. We hope that as you're closing out your schools and just cherishing those moments with your students as they move to the next level, thank you for all the work that you're doing every day,
Yes.
supporting those teachers and getting those students to the finish line. We know that our Florida schools are the best in the country and in the world. And
Yes.
we have some of the most amazing leaders. So we really want to thank you for listening today. Please make sure you're sharing the FAFSA Leadership Lounge with your colleagues, and definitely either read your news trackers each day, more news coming out as it comes for these updates. And we will certainly share any advocacy updates through the Friday Facts and the website. So stay tuned for more.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Janasiewicz. The podcast is produced by Jeff Willoughby. Special thanks to musical director David Higgins. Make sure to subscribe to the Leadership Lounge podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topic suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@fasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.